who casts lots, and if the probate judge has a conflict of some kind, in other words, he's in one of those elections, or he has been participating in the campaign of someone who then the presiding circuit judge would in fact then cast lots, just like it would be at the state and the actually federal and county level.
Okay. Wishes of the committee, Senator Madison.
Representative Jones, can you kind of give me an actual example, because I'm not quite understanding what.
Okay. If there was a municipal election and there was a situation where there had been a runoff, and in that runoff, those two individuals got the exact number of votes, which is, I don't know if that's ever happened, but this provision in the law is for in case it happens, then there's another way to do it. Actually, it would still go to the city council in municipal elections. If they could not break the tie, then the probate judge would cast lots just like in state and federal elections.
Oh.
Other than that, they would have to have a second runoff if they didn't do that way.
Senator Orr moves to give a little favor report, seconded by Senator Gutcher. All those in favor of a favor report say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and the bills go in favor of the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
I thank you, sir. House Bill 256, Chestnut. Someone handling that bill for Representative Chestnut. If not, then we'll come back to it shortly. House Bill 384 by Representative Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In Alabama, cities change oftentimes simply by numbers of people. When you reach 12,000 people in Alabama, your form of city government changes from a mayor sitting with the council to a mayor sitting apart with the council. In 2018, the legislature allowed cities between 12 and 25,000 to opt in by ordinance to stay with the mayor and city council form of government. But they had to do it within 30 days after the release of the census. So within 30 days after the release of the 2020 census, the city had to pass an ordinance that opted to stay into the mayor council form of government. What this bill does is allows them to opt in within 6 months of the date of the next election, following the census that puts them over 12 but less than 25.
Senator Gutcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on this, is not every municipality, we talked about that earlier, correct?
That's correct.
It's only those ones that after the census have moved from that were under 12,000 in population to over 12,000 in population, correct?
Yeah, in this case, the 2020 census. In 2030, it'd be the 2030 census, then 2040. I mean, it would be every census.
And they have to be able, I'm going to say opt in. They have to do it by ordinance.
Yes, sir.
Correct. So it has a majority vote of the council.
Right.
And then from that, if in time for the next 10 years that they say, you know what, we don't want the strong mayor, weak council government, we want to be strong council, weak government, set of government, then they can opt back out of that.
But they must do it within 6 months of the election.
Of the election, not the census. They don't have to wait 10 years. They have to do it through the next election. Is that correct?
Within 6 months of the next municipal election.
And it's just the people that moved over that $12,000 threshold. $12,000 population threshold.
That's correct.
In the last census.
If you went over 12 in 2010, you've already done this.
Right. And
you can't go back.
And just for clarification, this is not all. It's only for those coming over that 12,000 population threshold. So
that is correct.
And there's a repeal process, so I'm good.
And once you go over 25,
you have to stay.
You automatically make that move.
Understand. I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Senator Gutcher to give the bill a favor report.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Hill, do you know how many municipalities this would involve?
You mean right this minute, today? Mm-hmm. No, ma'am. I know one. That would be the city of Moody, St. Clair County, Alabama, and they've already passed the ordinance to stay in the city council form of government. Exactly how many it would cover statewide, I do not know. I do not know, but what this does, they can already do it, ma'am. In 2018, we allowed them to do this. They just had to make the election within 30 days after the release of the census information. All this does is says they must make the election within 6 months, pass the ordinance to make that election to stay within 6 months of their municipal election.
And the reason I was asking is because, does this bill have any provisions where, or some way through the maybe League of Municipalities, that this will be sent out to them as far as information if this bill passes, becomes law, so that they will know that if this is something that you want to do, you have that option to do it now?
The league certainly posts a lot of information, and they put out a handbook, and Ms. Lyon is here. I guess she could answer that question. But yes, ma'am. Generally, the league does a pretty good job of disseminating information to its members. Okay. But again, this is a pretty narrow class.
Okay.
Mr.
Mr. Robert?
Chairman? Judge,
Yes, sir.
question, when did we get the census? Is that normally every 10 years? Is it a specific date or just whenever it is made public that triggers the 6-month calendar?
No. What that would have triggered was the 30-day calendar.
Right.
Okay. What this does is you absolutely know when your next municipal election is going to be. So you back up 6 months you must do it within 6 months of that.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
It really makes it, I think, a little bit clear. And the league did ask me to do this, and I said, sure, because it makes sense to me.
Any other questions?
Yes. So within 6 months of the election, then if they decide to go that route, then the city will have to make the determination of whether the mayor is going to. Well, I guess it would still be the same thing, that he just would not be a voting member of the council at that point if they decide to do that.
No, if they decided, what the city would have to do is make a positive step to retain what they have. If they do nothing, then they automatically, the default position is you go to the council and the mayor sitting apart from the council.
Okay, it's automatic if they don't do anything.
Yes, ma'am. It's automatic. If they don't pass an ordinance opting in.
Okay, I got you.
Mr. Chairman, to confirm what you just said, to make sure my assumption is correct before we pass this bill, is that if they don't do anything, it stays like it is right now.
That's correct.
That's fine. Thank you.
We have a motion, and do we ever have a second?
Second.
Second by Madison Coleman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no, and the ayes have it. The bill is given a
Okay.
favorable report.
Thank you, sir.
I believe House Bill
Appreciate it.
256, Representative Chestnut.
Thank you. I just want to say that I just had a constitutional amendment on the House floor. That's why I wasn't here when it came up. So with this bill just simply breaks down the audit process to make it a little more transparent, but also to give some relief to the smaller municipalities. So if you have a municipality that has less than, well, has more than $300,000 in expenditures, then they will have to do an annual audit. If it's less than 300,000, but more than 100,000 in expenditures, then they will be able to do a biennial audit. And if their annual expenditures are less than 100,000, then they will be able to do a report a financial report that would have to be prescribed by the examiners of public accounts. So there's transparency on all levels, but it also gives the needed relief to the municipalities that do not have the funds to perform audits, because what we found over the years is that there are a lot of municipalities that don't have a lot of funds, so they just skip the audit process altogether.
Mr. Gerger.
How often do they have to do the report if they're at the lowest level of the gross revenue?
It would be biennial,
Biennial?
but they would have to, once they do it, they would have to cover the years that have not been covered up to that point.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Orr.
thank you. I think this bill comes from the examiner's office, so I would move favorable report.
Second motion by Senator Orr to give a favorable report, seconded by Senator Gertrude. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it, the bill is given a favorable report. Senate Bill 321, Senator Chastain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 321 clarifies a business that provides rental or leasing services in a taxing jurisdiction but has no other presence in the municipality is not required to purchase a municipal business license. And I
Senator
believe
moves to give the bill a favorable report.
we'll have an amendment.
Senator Butler has an amendment.
It's me, Senator Hawley, if that's okay with you, sir.
Y'all look
Just alike.
on Wednesdays.
You're a good-looking man, Senator Butler.
Senator Elliott.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, I have an amendment to Senator Chastain's bill that strikes the police jurisdiction language out of this bill. And I
We've agreed upon it.
favorable amendment.
Motion by Elliott, seconded by Gavan. All those in favor say aye.
I'm voting yes, Mr. Chairman. That's all right. Voting yes on the bill, but I'd like to talk to you about it on the way to the floor, if that's all right with you. Thank you.
Take some time now if you.
Thank you. No.
Mr. Chairman,
Motion.
I just have one quick question.
Oh, yeah, Senator Coleman.
Thank you. You say that this is, for instance, my main primary stationary building is in Shelby County. And I'm leasing equipment that is in another city or county. Then they would not be required to get a license for the equipment that they lease there.
From you, correct.
The business or the owner?
If you lease equipment and it's picked up and returned, if I have a business and you come to my business and you pick equipment up and take it to your place of business or wherever, for example, I'll use something, for example, these mega slides that are rented a lot of times for birthday parties for kids and so forth. If it's picked up and you bring it back, that business is not required to have a business license in that particular city where that equipment is taken to.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move we give the bill a favorable report as amended.
Passage of the bill as amended. Sponsor of the bill, the motion is who? Elliott and Butler. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those no, the ayes have it. The bill is given a favorable report. Senate Bill 326,
you, Mr.
Senator
Chairman.
Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill has to do with regulating the limit, the amount of THC in over-the-counter products. In my district alone, there was 3 high school kids that actually had to have emergency service called to them because of taking these products. Independent lab out of Tuscaloosa area ran off-the-counter samples, and they had between 9 and 15% THC in them, which is, yeah, I did the same thing, Senator. And so what this does is just gets it down to below that the current legal limit is to be sold over the counter. And if it's over the, also has an age limit of 21. And so it makes the penalties if you buy it and give it to a minor also the same as if you buy alcohol and give it to a minor. So.
Senator Orr moves, give the bill a favorable report, seconded by Senator Butler. Questions?
Does this have a name? What you're what those kids that had to have the call? What was?
There were several products. I'll be glad to get that before we go to the floor, but they took them from different, the label on the bottle could be several different name brands. It's just trying to get control and limit it to the.
I really appreciate your bringing this.
Well, that's different.
It's sold all over our state right now in this form.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Orr moved to go to favor report, second by Senator Butler. All those in favor of a favor report, say aye. Aye. Those no, ayes have it. A favor report is given. On Senate Bill 326, House Bill 241, Representative Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. I sent a draft of the bill earlier this week to the clerk, and I hope everybody got to see it. This is the LSA version, which is the exact same as the draft that was sent earlier.
You check our copy here and see if it's the same as Collins.
It's exactly as the one that we sent out
Here it
earlier.
is. Okay, we pass them out then.
While we're passing that out, if I'm allowed, I'd like to introduce a lot of the people that are in the bill that we've talked about. People were confused, and it's a workforce development bill, and a lot of the people are already on the P20 Council, and they are here in support of that. And if I could ask them to stand so you can just see the groups that are in support of the bill and have already signed MOUs of understanding so that they're already working together. Will they stand, please? So every one of the groups that you see mentioned in the bill are already here in support of the bill, and I appreciate them taking time to be here.
Mr. Chairman, so, whoa. I'm just getting this substitute. So what we have in the package is not.
It's the same thing. It's just this is the LSA version. If you look at what you had in the package, there wasn't a number on top.
So are we there? So this is the same bill word for word?
The same bill that we had earlier, but Chairman Holly and several wanted it to be simplified, wanted it to be smaller. If you remember, it was about 33 pages. So we have taken out some of the definitions. We've changed some of that to clarify it, but it still does the same things, but we've got it down to the 13 pages. What I'd like to remind and to share with the committee too, actually in my Rotary committee yesterday, Senator Orr was there. We had Decatur City Schools Career Academies of Decatur present, and they actually are doing everything that's in this bill. They're already choosing to do it, but they're paying for it with some of their own. If you remember, the three things this does is it creates a credential registry so that the credentials that we are offering are those of value in those regions. And that would be set up and it would be published through the Department of Education. The second thing it does is it uses a career pathways. Right now, Decatur City is using PARCA so that they overlap their data and they can see what are those jobs, high demand jobs that are there, and what are the credentials it takes to get to them. And then the last piece that this does is that it requires every graduate by 23-24 to have a college and career ready indicator. And what Decatur has done since they have put an emphasis on this is that in 2018, only 62% of their students had college and career ready indicators. But within 3 years, they've gotten up to 92% of their students graduate with either a benchmark on ACT, a AP course benchmark, a credential, a work keys, scoring at a silver or gold on work keys, military entrance, a part of an apprenticeship. Those are those indicators so that when they graduate, they know that they are ready to either go to college or they're ready to go to a career and they have something that proves they're ready. This bill has not changed the content from what we talked about before. It's just simplified it and made it easier to read. And that's what you had sent. What we had sent was a version of a draft of it, and this is the LSA version.
Mayor, So this, in Decatur, this is the Decatur school system, right?
Yes.
Okay. Of all the people that stood up, I did not see the state superintendent. Did I miss him?
He may not be here today, but they've very much been a part of the bill, and they've already signed the MOU, and they are participating.
Okay.
Yes.
And I really would like to hear, because if this is something, this would be a state law that would be passing. It wouldn't just be one school system. I really would.
No, it would be all of them, and they've been working with us wholeheartedly the whole time.
If there's a representative here representing the state school.
Oh, there is.
May
Jessica.
we hear from that person, Mr. Chairman?
This one there. Before we go forward, I want to ask the Vice Chair to say a word about the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I just want to make sure we're clear on what's before you and what's been passed out here recently. You do not have in your packet what has recently been passed out. And Representative Collins, make sure I'm correct in saying this, the last 5 numbers of the LSA version of your substitute are 22709.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure members understand that is the most recent substitute, but it has not been in your packet. You sent it to me and I've reviewed it, but it did not get in the members' packets. And
What I sent to you was a draft, which this is exactly what that was that I sent to you last week.
I just want to make sure the members knew that they did not have a copy of it and that will be what's before you, so that there's some clarification on that. 22709.
Thank you.
No, clear eyes. I want you to make sure you know that's new to you.
All right. You wanted to speak?
To someone from the Board of Education?
I'd like to hear someone from the State Board
Department of Education?
Yeah, because I know that this has been condensed, but we've still got
We're still doing the same 3 things.
13
Yes,
pages
ma'am.
so I don't know what's been taken out or condensed. But anyway.
Some of the definitions were taken out, some of the language. A lot of the things that were taken out where we were specifying how they would set up their rules, but we let the different groups set up their own rules.
Good afternoon, committee members. I'm Jessica Sanders with the Department of Education. I have not 100% familiarized myself with this new condensed version, but I can say that we do participate with a memorandum of understanding now with Department of Labor, Department of Commerce, and others on sharing data. We do that through a federal grant. We are participating now in a version of this. The things that would change would be the things about the graduation requirements and requiring every student to have one of these before they graduate.
My concern is, I really would want to know that the State School Board of Education is on board with this, since this is going to be something that's going to blanket our state, involve all schools. I really would like to see you all at the forefront saying, we are very familiar with everything that's in here. We endorse it. I understand that there are components that you're working with memorandum of understanding with components of it. But the Department of Education is the agency that we look at when it comes down to education. And I would like to know that we have a complete endorsement, because to me, that would give me peace of mind.
I'll do whatever you say.
With this. And right now, I don't know. I'd like to take time to read it, but time would not really allow us to go through it and ask all the questions. And I would like to be given the opportunity to do that. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe this committee, last time we discussed this bill, had a committee substitute that was adopted. Is that correct? So at this time, I'd like to move to table the committee substitute previously adopted by this committee.
Second.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to go ahead and put the substitute that's been offered in front of the committee by motion, and having Mr. Canfield and Mr. Castile, the governor's office, and the State Department all represented here in support, probably a good thing for us to move along given the time in the session that we are. So I'd move that we adopt the submitted substitute.
Yeah, read that number.
22709.
I don't have a copy of that. 22709? I don't have, that's different. This is a number, project number.
What version of this passed the House?
The first version that I had in committee the day that we came, it passed unanimously.
The one's got the C.
It was just longer. It was 33 pages, and there were things in it because there were workforce terminology, and we wanted to simplify that and take some of that out.
So I'm trying to understand if another version passed the House, this is a different version.
It's a condensed version of what passed the House. Nothing in the content has changed at all. And all of the different groups from pre-K to K-12 to community college to AIC, Department of Labor, Department of Commerce, Department of Rehabilitation, all of those are still working together, and we had a meeting yesterday, so we're already doing some of these things. This just sets up, the main thing it does is the graduation, and it just makes sure when our students graduate, they are prepared to go to college or they are prepared to go to career.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a few questions. Representative Collins. First is, I understand what you're trying to do here as far as link and kind of analyze data to put them, whether it's a career ready, military ready, or,
college,
higher ed or junior college at the same time. What bothers me is the data collection on this, and I want us to speak a little bit about that. But page 7, line 19, you start looking at that, it says to create the longitudinal records. Obviously in here it says it's going to be secure. You never know what that means in big tech nowadays. Everybody can get in any information they really want to. This obviously is collecting information about our children. Is this K through what?
It's pre-K all the way through labor. That's why they've already signed memorandums of understanding.
Not my question.
Okay.
What age does this go through? Pre-K through age 20? Through when it says labor?
Well, some of it's Department of Labor, and so it would be past that. It would be into their job market, so we can see when, like, we're not comparing an individual student. None of it's that. It's all de-identified information, but saying of a group of students that all had pre-K, how much better are they doing with peers that did not?
And
that would be one research thing we could look at.
Who controls the data and who owns the data?
Each group owns their own data. When you share it at one point in time, and so that is all combined in the Office of Statistics, which is under the Department of Commerce, and only that small office, it's only got one person right now, and I anticipate it probably having 2 or 3, but right now it's just the one, and so they are the only ones that have access to it. It is de-identified there, and then we can use that data once it's been linked for each of those groups to see what's working. That's what we're looking at, is what's.
I'm with you. Okay, I know where you're going. Second question is, on that data, that might be the group that has that data or owns it, or each of those entities, but who has the data? Who's the people that are actually
that Office of Statistics?
Do they own it and they have the data physically in their server, and that's the server, or is it a private entity that owns that outside?
Each group continues to own their own data only.
So
when they send a file, it's a one-time file that connects with the others.
I'm getting head shakes in the back with you. I think we're all on the same page. It worried me about data information from all of these people not being controlled by us, but going into a private entity.
No.
And anytime you track as many people as we're getting ready to start tracking, that bothers me if we don't know what the outcome is or if it's not in a safe regard for that. So I'll be asking more about that as we go to the floor.
And I'm glad to get that for you.
Thank you.
I'd move favorable, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Aye.
Abstain.
Senator Albritton, Senator Chambliss, Senator Coleman Madison, Senator Elliott,
Aye.
Senator Gavan, Senator Gudger, Senator Orr, Senator Roberts, Senator Sanders 48, Senator Shellnut, Senator Butler, Senator Hawley,
No. Three ayes.
We should come here.
3 ayes and 4 noes and 4 abstentions. Bill fails to have a favorable report. Bill, y'all,
Thank you.
Senate Bill 316 by Senator Melson. Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like 316. I'd like to carry that one over, please.
Mr. Chairman, move to carry over Senate Bill 316.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it, the bill is carried over. 317, Melson, Senator.
Thanks, sir. A few years ago, we set up a Ag Authority Board bill, but what this bill does is it just cleans up that bill. There's a couple of things that needed to be addressed. One of them was the ability, you could buy property, but you could never sell it if you needed to. This allows you to sell. Particular case that I'm dealing with is the school system wants to put a workforce center, and they can't buy that property, but for bond reasons, they need to be able to. So this allows them to do that. Also, there's nothing in there about if you take a bond out and you receive the money, nowhere to invest that. So this allows you to put that money in, like Bank of Mellon can advise you to put it in some low-bearing, no-risk or minimal risk investment. And then the third thing it does, it allows you to go into a public-private partnership. So if you had an investment company like we've talked to a company that's currently doing the Portomobile actually, and they wanted to talk to us, but there's nothing in that bill that allows the authority to go into a public-private partnership. And this bill, I think there's an amendment that my colleague.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got an amendment. This amendment really gives the county commission the ability to approve these tax rebates if they're occurring. So the former county commissioner and me is looking out for our county commission. So I'd offer that amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Butler. All those in favor of a favorable report will say aye.
Aye.
No, the ayes have it, the bill is
Which,
That was the amendment. We did do the favorable report. And I'd move favorable report.
move passage.
Aye.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to say to the former county commissioner that this was in the previous bill, so this actually allows them to have the ability to get out. So you did a good job watching out for the county commission. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. HB 194 is a bill that would prohibit state or local official that is responsible for the conduct of an election, his or her employee, from soliciting, accepting, or using donations of money, grants, property, or personal services from an individual or non-governmental entity for the purpose of funding certain election-related expenses, including voter education, voter outreach, or voter registration programs. Mr. Chairman, I'd be glad to answer any questions at this time.
there's only three. We'll allow three individuals to speak, and you have about 2 minutes, give or take a minute or two. Carla Woodall.
Good afternoon. My name's Carla Woodall. I serve as the absentee election manager in Houston County, and I come to you not only in that capacity, but also as a citizen for the state of Alabama. When this bill first came early in the session, pardon me, Wes, but I thought it was somewhat of a fluff bill until I peeled that onion back and got to realizing that privatization of our elections is key, and the prevention of that is key as well. At what point do you stop private groups from donating to our elections? And that's essentially what it is. Special interest groups in donating funds. Our government is responsible for it. You have two voices in government. One is to go to the polls and vote, and one is to serve as a juror. In the judicial system, we have to keep those scales balanced. The same in elections. With private donations, you're tipping those scales of that election before those voters even get to the polls. By private groups giving money to our elections, you decrease the integrity of our elections as well as the confidence of voters for our elections. Election officials serve at the pleasure of the public, and it's funded by government, and it should remain that way. I think it's even sad that we're even having to have this legislation and discuss it. So I ask for you to give it a favorable report and keep the funding with government. Thank you.
Can we ask a question? Wait, I have a question. I'm confused. Are you talking about giving donations to people who are in public office or running for public office, or are you talking about election or the voting process, which is a nonpartisan process?
The actual process, in other words, a special interest group purchasing computers and giving them to elected officials to utilize those computers to work elections.
Okay, give me an example.
A private interest group for an election office donating money for them to use to buy the machines or computers or printers or supplies or paper. Next thing you know, those election officials are in debt to those private companies or special interest groups. Does that make sense? Am I answering your question?
Not really. You're answering the question, but it doesn't really make sense because the vote is still a private vote.
Correct.
And so what are we saying, that they're in there changing votes?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. What I'm saying is that election officials in government is responsible for ensuring that our elections are financed, not on the backs of special interest groups. So in other words, this is not money given to candidates or people running for office. This is money to actually fund our elections, whether it's for publicity of dates of when to come, where polls are going to be, how they are staffed with individuals, with poll workers, in any capacity that government funds are used to fund an election.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I'm misreading the bill, but the bill says that during the state of public health emergency, donations of items for the preservation or protection of the public health is to be used by the voters or election officials. That's what the bill says, and it's not about computers and money and everything else that we're mentioning here. It's about, like during the pandemic when we were trying to have elections and we didn't have enough masks and that kind of stuff. It's about the public health. This bill is not about a broad range of things, so I would just challenge you to read the first few sentences there.
Senator Allen, Representative Allen, say a word about the amendment and how it doesn't fit in with what you're trying to do.
Yes, it's an exemption. So in case there is, it was not originally in the bill, Senator Chambliss. We added that on the House floor when we had debate on it. It basically says if there's another public health emergency, which I hope there's not in our lifetime or ever, that local public officials who are over our elections can accept materials like hand sanitizers, masks, PPE materials to help protect the public if there's ever another health crisis like what we went through back in 2020.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Kathy Jones.
Can I ask him a question
Yes,
before
ma'am.
he sits down, please? Okay, so that particular part of the bill also, so there could be, a statewide or a national or international health emergency, but there also could be something that's more local. And the way that's written to me makes it sound like it can only occur, those donations can only be accepted if it's equally distributed throughout the whole state. But the crisis could be local and not statewide. So that concerned me.
Yes, ma'am. I understand.
You would review that area.
Yes, sir.
Kathy?
Hi. Good afternoon. I wanted to mention that we did have 5 speakers that came from across Alabama to speak today, and I understand you said we only had 3, so we thought we had up to 6. So just thought I'd clarify that. If there's time, we'd like to let you hear
Yeah,
from...
but we only had about 15 minutes to
Okay, well...
get everybody in.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, good afternoon. I'm Kathy Jones. I'm president of the Alabama League of Women Voters, and I wanted to express my appreciation to the members of the Senate Government Affairs Committee for today's hearing. For over 100 years, the League of Women Voters has been a completely volunteer, nonpartisan, strictly nonpartisan political organization with members living in counties across Alabama. And we proudly acknowledge the contributions and impact that the powerful, patriotic Alabama women and men who have advocated and fought for voting rights in Alabama and across the country. The League of Women Voters is one of many local, non-governmental voting rights groups who walk in their footsteps, and we serve all of Alabama, and we provide voter education, voter registration, and voter outreach opportunities to every person, including young and old, poor and wealthy. I wanted to clarify a misperception that I'd heard on the news recently. We don't just set up tables in isolation. We actually work very closely with our elections officials in the counties where we're located and across the state. And we work hard to provide accurate, timely, reliable information. And we work 365 days a year. And we work and communicate and collaborate with elections officials routinely to make sure that we're providing a service that meets the need. And the confusing catch-all term of personal services is the problem. That, coupled with mandatory jail time and monetary penalties for county election officials and their staff, is not good. It'll generate an atmosphere of uncertainty and reluctance to communicate and collaborate with organizations such as the League of Women Voters, and is going to place one more burden of fear and potential for intimidation on hardworking, selfless election workers who are conducting secure elections that also must protect the health and safety of workers, their election staff, poll workers, the voters. And we should be encouraging civic engagement and participation in democracy without sowing doubt, fear, or division. And the language of HB 194 is confusing, but the intent is really clear. And we are asking that you please strike the personal services language or just kill the bill, because it is not doing the Alabama a good service.
Thank you very much. Let's see if we can move along. We're going to have about 10 minutes to ask questions if we can get through the hearing. Senator, but go ahead. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
I just had a question for you, is it Kathy? Yeah, does this stop the League of Women from registering people to vote still, which is what you're saying that you wanted to do?
We would still well, we're still going to get out there and work on registering voters. The problem is a lot of times there are questions that some of the citizens will be working with us, and we go back and sit and work with the registrars, or we may hold events with the registrars. We've gone, for example, with the state of Alabama, we go with the Secretary of State's voter ID van often and actually sit with them and help them if they need voting rights restoration assistance. And so it's more of like a one-on-one. If we have questions, we work with the people that are in those offices. And we're just concerned that this is going to dampen, put a wet blanket basically on working with groups like ours.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Michael Bullen.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to my senator and my representative. I'm here to speak as a proponent for this bill. I am the judge of probate for Pike County, chief election officer for Pike County, and I believe that we do need to make sure that we don't have private money interfering in our elections, and this has the potential for that. Over $400 million was spent throughout the country. Certainly places like Pennsylvania, where you hear so many people concerned, one of the counties, Chester County, Pennsylvania, got $2.5 million. Their budget was only $2.3 million for elections. That makes a significant impact. And when that money is being spread out in different counties in different ways, I think that that's dangerous, and we don't want that in Alabama. Right now, our friends in Mississippi who have a similar bill are dealing with a $300,000 amount that they need to figure out what's wrong through their auditor. Again, I don't want to see that in our offices. My folks don't need money from private entities. We receive all the money we need from the state.
Thank you, sir. Hugh Evans.
While he's coming, Mr. Chairman, is this a problem in the state? I mean.
No. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I'm Hugh Evans. I'm with the Office of the Secretary of State. And first of all, let me say we are adamantly opposed to the privatization of elections. However, we cannot support this bill because of one issue. One of the biggest parts of our outreach is our mobile ID photo units, where we go to various locations, help people register to vote, provide photo IDs for them. We had offered some language that did make it into the bill that would make it clear that if there's an event going on that's being funded by a private entity, that we could still participate, provided we weren't the sponsor of the event, we weren't directing the event, we weren't financing the event, planning the event, that if we were invited to bring our mobile unit up there, that we could indeed still bring our mobile unit up there. That's our concern with.
Let us move right along, if we could, to the next opponent of the bill. That was the opponent. Becky Coristan.
It's Garrettson, close.
Garrettson.
Hi, I am the Executive Director for Eagle Forum of Alabama, and we are in support of HB 194. Election integrity is of utmost importance in our country. Free and fair elections are the cornerstone to our democracy, and they are a legitimate role of government. And in our state, they are fully funded by our taxpayer dollars. We totally agree that there's absolutely no legitimate reason for anyone to have the chance to buy any aspect of the ballot equipment, people that are involved in the administration of our elections. This common sense bill is a way to ensure that future election integrity in the state of Alabama stays secure. This is one of the most important election laws that we can pass during this legislative session. It's had wide support. It passed in the House 72 to 28, and we ask that you please vote a favorable report today. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Clark. This is going to conclude the public comments.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, committee members, congregation. I oppose HB 194 because I'm a formerly incarcerated individual. I was released in 2017 with a 4-year probationary period. I successfully completed that period last year. I worked 3 jobs, I paid taxes, I raised my family, and you can imagine how excited I was to regain my right to vote. I immediately applied for a certificate of eligibility to register to vote, which the Board of Pardons and Paroles granted me. I took it down to my county registrar's office, and I was told by the clerk that I was not eligible to vote because of an outstanding charge that disqualified me. I recontacted the Board of Pardons and Paroles, and they assured me that my certificate of eligibility was intact. I didn't know what to do. I talked to my friends at the League of Women Voters and with Greater Birmingham Ministries, and they contacted the supervisor of the county registrar's office, who then reviewed my case and registered me to vote. That process took several months, but I'm now a registered voter in my county because the League of Women Voters and Greater Birmingham Ministries acted on my behalf. The language in this bill that talks about personal services, that talks about voter outreach, registration, and education is inappropriate for this state because it hurts people like me who need help, primarily because a lot of our county registrars are apparently inadequate. But when I need help, I need reliable help, and I need it from good organizations that have done this for decades. This bill prohibits that kind of work in our state. It criminalizes helping people like me.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Gavan.
So much has been made about personal services. The example the gentleman just shared, I don't see that being prohibited whatsoever. Notwithstanding any other law, no state or local public official responsible for the conduct of election. That's not the League of Women Voters. That's not any private group that wants to help someone. I mean, someone would be able to go to an attorney for help. Someone would be able to go to volunteer organizations for help. This is the government, not only the government. So I think this is a misunderstanding of what's here.
I move favorable.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, I have
Seconded by Senator Elliott.
unreadness.
So I have a question for the representative because I'm trying to understand if there is something that has happened already that makes it where somebody or regular organization that's a civic engagement organization donated something to the governmental to the government, and then that somehow impacted the election. There was some fraud or there was something done as a result of them donating items or donating resources that skewed the election in some kind of way. Is there some kind of example of that makes this bill important?
We had 7 counties in 2020 accept private donation that came from the Mark Zuckerberg money that flowed through that private nonprofit back during 2020. Now, I don't know what they did with the money. I don't know if it skewed the election one way or the other. But this bill simply states that we want to make sure that no private money gets into our public offices, those people who are responsible for conducting our elections.
Thank you, sir.
Can I just make one comment in response very quickly? So I think what I heard, and I could be wrong, but I think what I heard the League of Women Voters say is that this bill, not that the specific language outlaws any of that, but that there would be a chilling effect on registrars wanting to interact. So even the Secretary of State's office is saying this is going to make it more complicated for us to register voters, because if we're associated with private entities or private money, that might create some confusion about, does this bill say we can do it? Does this bill say that we cannot do it? So I think it's a chilling effect that is the concern. Thank you.
Senator moves the favor report and seconded by Senator Orr. All those in favor say aye.
Roll call, please. No. And I think this is going to affect local officials as far as us.
No. Eight ayes and 2 nays. The bill favor report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
Just for the record, the official watch would mean